Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Talking Niagara this morning, Thursday, 8th of May. Hey, Dave.
Yay.
Um, it's day two
Day
of
two
the
of what?
papal voting system, right? And they've
Oh,
voted
yes.
out. They voted three times, and 34 minutes ago, black smoke appeared above the Sistine Chapel.
Do you know why? Oh, first of all, we should welcome everybody. Welcome
Yeah,
to Talking Niagara, the foremost opinion show in the world.
for our opinions, anyway.
Yeah, in our minds too. The
Yeah,
so yeah, I was reading about this, and it turns out that uh, the reason why the Cardinals are locked into the conclave is because they have had difficulty in long ago they had difficulty in getting a pope, and one time it took over 2 years, 2.5 years before they were able to get a
56,
vote.
56 months.
56 months.
Yes, that's
And
the
once
longest one. Back in
and what
1100s.
so once the pope was finally elected, Gregory, I think his name was, he figured, well,
Yeah,
I gotta fix this. So rather than Cardinals coming and then going and then coming, we're gonna lock him in one place and force him to come to and concentrate on that. And until they come to an agreement, they can't leave.
yeah,
And that was the best way to do it because, of course, Cardinals have got their own business and their own sections of their own lands.
yeah,
And if you have them if you have them leave or not concentrate, then you might get into a situation where you never do come to a conclusion. And
yeah,
this way, the Pope that was finally elected during that time said, "Look, you're going to have to stay here until it's done, and this is the only way we can do it is to make sure that that is the primary reason for your existence until it is concluded." And that's why you're locked into a conclave.
Well, I have a question for you. Has a pope ever been elected on the first ballot?
That I don't know. I would imagine some of the early popes in during Rome's early years.
Well, I would imagine like Pope Peter stood unopposed.
Well, yeah, that was the first pope, and
Yeah, yeah,
I don't know, all the methodology was just being established, and the whole culture of the Vatican and so on had yet to uh, really be developed. And in the early days, the Pope of Rome or the Bishop of Rome was just really just the Bishop of Rome.
yeah,
And it took a while before that particular bishop then became the one that became the Pope, the leader of the church. And it is an interesting mix of uh, old Roman administration plus Middle Eastern religion. So if you look at it just from the outside looking
oh,
in, it's a very, very interesting development.
okay. So the
We'll
quick,
also like to point out that Christianity is really the outlayer of the three Abrahamic faiths. The three faiths that are all related. Judaism spawned the Christianity and Islam. It is the basis of both those two religions, and Islam and Judaism are much more closely related. They
yeah,
Hebrew and Arabic are very similar languages. The Islam and Judaism have a diet code, uh, kosher and halal. They are very, very similar.
oh yeah,
And the,
pretty well
the
identical those two codes. Yes,
yeah, and most Muslims, except for the Omani Muslims, face Mecca and pray 5 times a day. The Omanis do it 3 times a day, and that was based on basically Jews praying 3 times a day. I think sort of towards Jerusalem. So, and in the early days of Islam, they did not face Mecca; they faced Jerusalem, and then a little later on, they changed it to Mecca. So those two religions, Judaism and Islam, are much more similar
Yeah.
than Christianity. Christianity is quite an outlier in the Abrahamic faiths, so of the two. But essentially, Judaism was the mother of Christianity and Islam, and almost from the beginning, it's been a dysfunctional family.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So here I go. The last three papal elections were wrapped up in 2 days.
Yes.
So we may be done today.
Okay. There is some real strong. They have some problems. They may have had to restrict a couple of cardinals because of that ongoing pedophilia and child abuse scandals that some of the cardinals may have been mixed up, maybe not personally, but part of the cover up. So there was a lot of issues there that are left over from way back in the Polish Pope John Paul II that never did really get resolved, and so the church is really at a crossroads. I think Francis probably tried to get most of that fixed and to make sure that such things never happen again, where the church covers up the the misdeeds of its priests, etc.
Yeah. Okay. So the answer to my question is provided by the New York Times. No pope has ever been elected on the conclave's first vote.
There you go.
There you go. Yeah. Okay. So we'll keep that going. We'll keep that going as we move. But maybe there will be a chance there'll be answers today. Morning, Mike.
I wouldn't notice an African pope this time. I think that one of the strong contenders is one of the African popes or African cardinals. I haven't followed it very carefully, so
I would like to see somebody from Africa do it. Yeah.
Yes.
I think it would be a smart move by the Catholics.
Good morning, Mike. Yep. Good morning, Betty Zoom.
About that, Betty. Good morning. Yeah, everybody. Heard that news. Yeah. Okay. All right. So moving on. Gale. Bob Gale has made the first move in the 2026 budget. Sorry, 2026 budget chess game. Yeah, next year's budget. I had to read that twice to make sure that I was reading it right.
Yes. Now, Bob has put out there that that we have to keep the budget increase somewhere to the point where the average person can handle it. Right now, many of our lower earners in our society, or even mid earners, basically, struggle very hard to get adequate housing, even rentals. And Bob has pointed out here that Bob has served the motion at the full meeting of the regional council in April that, if approved, it would limit the region's consolidated levy budget to 3.5%. And remember, and the region's tax increases over the past 3 years have been 9.6, 7.03, and 7.5.
Oh yeah.
He says this is not sustainable.
This is not sustainable. He's right. He's right. Because nobody's got that money, right? Nobody's had 10% wage increases.
Yeah. Now we can't really fault the region too much because their expenses have gone through the roof as well, and that's during COVID we had supply chain problems.
Yeah, we know that. Yeah,
and inflation and all of those things. So what he's want to do is bring it right back down to funnel. You cannot keep raising the taxes at that rate. You
Yeah.
will make your citizens suffer. It will not. You need affordable housing else because that is part of the stimulant of your economy. If you're a construction worker, tourist workers, and other even mid, you kind of think of low income, but even mid income people are struggling, and that is not good for the economy. It's not good for the health of the region. It's really not good for the morale of the region, is it? And the region could exacerbate that by continuing high increases in for regional taxes. That becomes an additional burden on people. So can it be done? He has asked for this. He has tabled it. He has said, okay, that's it. We got to draw the line. We got to start thinking of the people and how much they can afford.
But
Well,
there's one thing having a motion on it at this time when you're 9 months out from having a budget in place. It's easy to make to vote for such a motion. It's a lot harder to vote for that motion when you've got a budget staring down your neck.
well, he's trying to draw a line in the sand.
Yeah,
He's
I know.
trying to. He's trying to.
I applaud him for it.
Yeah, he's trying to make it very clear from early on that come on, guys, come on. We're going to get lost in the fact that we need more and more and more. It says here that the police budget was $213 million, going up roughly 13% in the past year.
Yeah.
We do know here, even in our own city, that the fire department eats up nearly a quarter of the budget.
Yeah.
So there has to be reversal somewhere along the line.
Yeah.
And when you're looking at like the police presence is required, but when you look at, I'm looking at the police cars, and they have some pretty expensive big SUVs. Do they really need those? I remember when I was in and around London, the traffic cop, the guys that were nailing people on the highways, were in cars, small cars, small unmarked cars, and they were the guys that were doing the traffic stuff. I would see these guys in a little ordinary everyday car, and one of the most inexpensive ones on the market.
Well, the thing
would
about
be the ones that put on their flashes and pull people over. So why do they need? So I question that. Why do they need such expensive vehicles?
Yeah, and some of those SUVs are very expensive on gas.
Yeah, it's gas. The initial outlay for them is very expensive. Now, I want them to have the very best equipment that they need, but do they need something like that?
Yeah, but do you need that for just the average cop on the beat?
Yeah, and when you see when I got pulled over a couple of months ago, it was just one cop in this big SUV thing, and I was even thinking at the time, like, I mean, anybody could have pulled me over. I mean, a souped up Fiat could have pulled me over. I wasn't going that fast. So it makes me wonder if where's the restraint here? You're buying yachts when you could go for an ordinary sailboat. I'm thinking, you could do it with a catamaran. You don't need a yacht.
Yeah, you don't need it's different for the OPP because they have to catch the speeders on the highway, right?
No, I've seen them. Well, they do have to. If the speeder will not pull over, then they'll need something. They have had interceptors. A cop friend of mine was buying old police cars as kind of a hobby at one time, and he came and picked me up, and he had one there where it was just like, oh wow, it was more like a bullet than it was a car. But those are exceptional. Most of the traffic a cop could pull anybody over that's going too fast. If somebody's going 140 or 150, almost
the
any
average car can do that. Yeah.
yeah, almost any car could do that. And if they
Yeah.
have the flashes on, and also they can identify the license plate, even if the guy doesn't want to turn, pull over.
And besides which, you just need to set up a barrier further ahead.
Yeah, but 99.9% of them are not runaway type
Yeah, they're not. No, they're not.
speeders. Yeah, they are. They will pull over if the cops put the lights on. And do we really need something of that?
Yeah, the average person who stopped on like the QEW is typically the person who's just been caught going too fast.
Yeah.
Yeah. Most of them have just kind of, oh, sorry, officer, didn't mean to do that. Yeah, and we don't need the top-notch cars necessarily for that thing. The same with people just on normal highways. You just overtook a cop too fast.
Yeah, and also, what's with the designer paint job? It looks pretty fancy. How about just police? I remember
Every cop force in North America seems to have a designer paint job.
yeah, really, is that necessary? How
Yeah.
about just police? If you go to Europe, they have pretty plain looking cop cars with just police on them.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was a kid in Toronto at the time, in Toronto and Scarborough, the police force had yellow cars so that they would stand out, and they would just have ordinary police on them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that would be fine enough. So we could reflective paint in there. Yeah, I would say that's pretty important, but they're black. And one of the things you want to do is make sure that your cop car is bright enough that everybody sees it, because
Well, I think we should have reflective.
there are problems when you pull over somebody and the car is dark. Even if they have their lights on, you still want to have the car as illuminated as
Well, you
possible.
need to have reflective. The cop car needs to have reflective panels on it so you can see it.
Yeah, that's good, but it also should be a bright color, I thought, as well.
I don't know about the bright color, but reflective panels for nighttime.
Well, bright colors helps see the cops. So if you've got a white car with police painted on it, that's fine. But anyway, these are minor things.
Those are minor things anyway. Yeah.
And
okay.
Like I just wondering who is no wonder the budget's going up 13%. What we need is good, well-trained police officers in safe vehicles.
Yeah.
And we don't need the Cadillacs. We need the Dallas.
Yeah. The tax you pay here still pay school tax, even though you don't go have kids in school. Doesn't bother me. Muller about each province where it goes. Trump says that 200. Yeah, that's a blatant lie. That's a blatant lie anyway.
As far as the taxes go, some people have never had children and have to pay that tax. I had no problem before I was married from ever since I started working from 18 until I got married at 33. I didn't have any problem paying taxes for education because that's an investment in our community.
Yeah,
it's like paying people that don't have a car that
I don't have problems paying taxes for education. I don't have problems paying taxes for healthcare
or roads.
They're all essential.
People never buy a car.
Yeah,
and they're paying taxes but these are things that improve the community as a whole and our civilization as a whole. So they are justifiable taxes, I would think, in my mind.
And that's a part of the budget you're not going to get disposed of anyway. And the same with police force. But yeah, it's the right move to actually try and limit the budget.
Yeah, so he's drawing a line in the sand very early, and he's putting that challenges out there so that we don't get you can imagine later on when they do put up the budget and it's another 9.6%, and then you have to start paring it down to try to get to 3.5%. He's put a line in the sand now, 3.5% and no more. And so when they begin to make up the budget, they already have that restriction on them,
Yeah.
and they can work with that. What happens with our budgets is they come up and they're too large, and then they have to say, oh, what are we going to cut? We're going to cut this, going to cut that. But if you come up with a budget that's only 3.5%, and that's the guideline, then you have less of
I
a problem
applaud.
discussing it.
Yeah, I applaud Bob for putting up the 3.5%. I would also applaud the regional council if they get to 3.7%. Let's say.
Well, I think the reasoning here is sound. You
Yeah,
cannot
absolutely.
keep burdening your citizens with ever increasing taxes when their wages are not going up, and
Yeah,
housing went up radically higher than the regular cost of living over the past 10 years, 15
yeah.
years. So the
Whether
you know,
you're renting or owning, housing cost has gone up incredibly in the last 10 years.
yes, much more than would match the salary
Yeah,
increases that people normally get.
exactly, exactly.
So
Right.
Bob is pretty much saying, "Come on, it's time to get time to be on the side of the citizens, and we just really just have to be more frugal and find areas where we can reduce our budget."
And Mike's talking about wastewater treatment plant. Yes, but we also need to get that budget under control.
Yeah, the way Mike's pointing this out, like, how are you going to do that when your wastewater and your ordinary water
Yeah,
is very expensive? It's being held together with duct tape and wire right now. It's overaged, overutilized, and long overdue for replacement. And that replacement is going to be a big hunk of the budget. So we are really in a tight corner here. How are
yeah,
we going to keep the budget at 3.5% when there are so many bills to be paid?
yeah. It's going to be a tough call, but I get where Bob Gale is coming from. If we go into the year thinking that by the end we get to the end of the year, we've got to actually limit the next year's taxes to 3.5%, we have at least some chance of keeping it down. As I said, I'd be happy. I'd applaud the region if they got to 3.7% by the end of the year for next year's budget.
Yes, yeah, but basically, see, if passed, the motion will direct regional departments, and this is the intelligence of this to start it off now,
Yeah,
because if passed, the motion will direct regional departments to set a guidance rate of 3.5%, so they don't have to come back later and try to pare it down. They can start at a place where it's pretty low right away. The motion also
absolutely.
directs
Yeah,
staff to advise agencies, boards, and commissions, including the Niagara Regional Police, Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, and Niagara Housing, which are funded through the region's levy of the guidance rate. And yeah, okay. It also says Gale, and this is important. Gale said the municipal act establishes that regional council is required to maintain the financial integrity of the municipality, and Niagara is currently, and this is a quotation marks, confronted with unprecedented economic and financial challenges. The consolidated general levy, inclusive of capital financing and program changes in 2025 and previous years, has placed a heavy, unaffordable, and unsustainable tax burden on property taxes for residents and local businesses, Gale said and read from Perez's statement. Well said.
Yeah.
Well said.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we start off with, I think we start with the right intentions in mind, and that'll lead us in the right direction.
Yeah. So, yeah, we are, democracies are debt burdened, and we don't want to get into more debt, and we want to be more physically responsible. If I ran my household the way most governments run their budgets, I would be on the street right now,
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
looking for Niagara Housing, Niagara Regional Housing to find me a place.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on. Internationally educated nurses are already here in Canada say the red tape is preventing them from working. And they're saying, bureaucratic hurdles, financial constraints, and complex licensing processes are standing in the way of them becoming nurses here in Canada.
Yes, it's well, you were talking about that a little while ago about like doctors.
It's
They call
every
that,
profession.
yeah. So you get doctors working in pizza parlors or driving taxis of some kind. Those are
Yeah.
called survival jobs. So when an immigrant comes in here, a doctor or a nurse or an accountant or something like
Or
that,
an engineer or anyone that you would expect to pay a high salary to.
yeah, and they can't break in because for one thing, they don't have the competency in the language, and it takes them a long time for their credentials to measure up to Ontario or Canada standards. And in the meantime, they get these what's called survival jobs, and that's of course,
Yeah, but then on the other hand, you also get people who are coming here from English speaking nations like Australia, New Zealand, etc., who feel the same pinch. But yet they
it's
can't get
much
the jobs
easier for them. It's much easier
it's
for
much
them.
easier for them, but they still can't get the jobs because of the unnecessary bureaucratic hurdles that are put into place.
Well, the hurdle, okay, the hurdle, the number one hurdle is get your qualifications up to Canadian standards. Okay, and if of course places like in the focus here in this article was a Philippine lady who came to Canada who answered the call of of the Canadian government that we need more nurses. So she was a nurse in the Philippines, so she came here. So
Mm,
of course her credentials were not up to the Ontario standard.
yeah,
So she took courses, and she improved her language. She did everything she was supposed to do. She she passed the English competency test. They have a test where they uh, they test their level of English competency, and hers was determined good, satisfactory to be a nurse. But like many internationally educated nurses, the 35-year-old knew her credentials alone wouldn't get her in there. So what she's done is she's done a bunch of courses and things. The article goes on. She did a National Nursing Assessment Service, passed the mandatory language exam, and registered in the College of Nurses of Ontario,
yeah,
eventually training and working in the emergency department of Michael Garron Hospital. But even after clearing all these professional hurdles, her path to stay in Ontario was denied because her educational credentials didn't meet the equivalency standards for a Canadian bachelor degree. So there's two ways of looking at this article. Number one, she could not meet the credentials. She couldn't. So that's why she was turned down. So the article, another article might say that the credentials are too hard. Uh, why didn't this woman pass the credentials? Why, if she has English uh, competency, why and has done these courses and has worked as a nurse? What is it about the Ontario credential criteria that is so hard. My own niece is a nurse. She went through the regular system and got in. You can't be any kind of slouch to be a nurse. You have to have pretty good.
No, of course.
And but my problem with the article is it doesn't say why she couldn't pass the credentials. Are they that difficult? Are they?
Or is it? Or are they set up to ensure that foreign trained nurses fail?
No, with the demand out there, I don't think so. They might have to review these to find out. I remember when I was in working in Welland Hospital, they had the registered nurses, the RNs. They were the top line nurses, and then underneath them, they had kind of like an occupational ON, occupational nurse, which was a nurse, but a little bit farther down. They couldn't give injections, and there's a bunch of things they couldn't do, but they could do a lot of the nursing work, and there was like 2 levels of them.
Yeah, so Betty is saying, what's wrong with Canada? And she's saying her niece is an RN who gets hired everywhere. She moves like a gypsy. I get that, Betty. You know, she's getting offers all over the place. I get it.
Yes. And because Ontario, maybe one of the problems is Ontario has a very high standard of nursing. And so where you might be able to fit into nursing in the Philippines or some other country, you have to attain a bit higher level to get in here. So we do need that. Now, what this lady has done is she's gone to New Brunswick, where the rules are a little less strict, where she could maintain a job and continue her training. But I think she would eventually face the same hurdle. She would have to bring her credentials up to the provincial level.
Yeah, but I suspect, the way I look at it is there has to be some form of on-the-job training. The level is
she's already doing.
The level is set here. They're coming in with a level that's determined as here. What they need is on-the-job training to bring them up, and to bring them up to that required level.
Well, this lady did work as a nurse, as it said in the article, and ultimately she was her residency was rejected because she could not bring her credentials up high enough, even though she's tried very hard. So that, to me, is we want nurses, lots of nurses, and we want doctors and everything else, but they still have to meet a certain level of criteria. And particularly now when there's like very questionable, very, very questionable level of competency in our own hospital. Like said before, there's my own niece, who was a nurse, had a simple appendicitis, and they kept sending her home and telling her it wasn't appendicitis. I was the one that told her it was appendicitis. I said, keep pushing that, because they somehow missed it, and they had missed it. And then she was forced to go on. Then the damn appendix burst.
Yeah.
This was right here in our Niagara General Hospital.
And what you said is right. There is differences in provincial licensing, because New Brunswick has a different standard than does Ontario. So there's a lot of provincial.
But they would be fairly equivalent. They'd be fairly equivalent.
Well, maybe
in any case,
maybe doing the New Brunswick route works for her.
Yeah, maybe that will give her more time to establish a level. And we don't really even know. Maybe when she was working in the hospital, maybe she was working more along the lines as a PSW there in the hospital. But then we need the nurses. there's lots of people who want to come and be nurses from overseas, but they don't have the credentials when they come here. They have to get those credentials. How easy can we get them? Are they capable of earning those credentials? That's the next thing.
Yeah.
So we're in a kind of a crossroads. We need doctors, we need nurses, but we need them at a level of competency. And what I'm afraid of, because of the demand is so high, will we reduce our standards? If we reduce our standards, that could be troublesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Reducing standards is not a good thing. Yeah. But again, we have to be very careful on that, and especially since we're trying to bring people in, right? So 3 comments here. So back in the day, my mother worked as a woman. She took worked for a woman. She took people in from the north, and my mum no nursing, but did what was asked. No paper to show she had qualifications. All about the paper today.
Yeah.
Right. As a kid, I was I helped her. Right. Yeah. Okay. Many people did. Yeah. I have a neighbor from India who can barely speak and understand English. I don't know how she was accepted into Canada. Okay. Fair question. But possibly it wasn't her, but her husband that was accepted into Canada.
Well, I don't think is English necessarily that helps you get into Canada, but it isn't everything you need, because obviously we have all kinds of immigrants coming here that don't speak English.
Yeah.
Don't we?
It depends which program they came through, because if they come as a refugee through the refugee programs, they're not they're not speaking English necessarily, right?
Well, also if they bring money, if they're Karen's neighbors and Karen lives in a nice neighborhood and they're brand new immigrants and they can afford a house right away, that's one of the criterias, or one of the incentives is if you have X amount of money, you're going to get that will help fast track you into the country.
Yeah. Okay. Betty's saying bring back the nuns. And I ain't swearing.
Hey, let me tell you, when I was in a place called when I busted my arm and damaged my knee and my bike accident in Thailand at Chiang Rai. I went to a private hospital there called Overbrook. And I'm telling you, all the nurses looked like the old-fashioned nurses. Nice white dresses, little white hats. They were military type discipline. They had the place was cleaner than clean. It was professional. You got looked at quickly. You got looked at by doctors, and like it was just very, very impressive. And so I have a bit of a problem with our system here. If we can't even match something that is in Thailand, it only cost $225 to get all the X-rays I had and get a cast on my arm and all that. And so I think there's a lot of ways too, but getting back to the fact that we do need medical professionals and stuff like that. But like I said, we are really kind of between a rock and a hard place. We need a lot, and we seem to have needed a lot all of a sudden. We can't produce that many that fast in our own educational system. And then when we do look overseas for qualified nurses and stuff, we find that their criteria is not high enough, and there's language barriers and all that. You want to have fully qualified nurses that have the wherewithal to do the job, and you don't want to reduce your standards, but you have this big need. Many years ago, we used to get a lot from Britain and other places in Europe. So when people still immigrated here from Europe, we could scoop their nurses. They were well trained and up, and their levels of competency were the same, basically. We can't do that now. So we're looking more in the developing world for nurses.
But even with Europe, the ones that are coming from Eastern Europe don't have the same standards as the Western Europe.
I'm not so sure about that. I know they have less. They would have the economies, and that would be less. Like if you get somebody from Romania or something like that, you might not. You may find a very well educated nurse in a rather poor country. I don't know. When I was in Libya, they used a lot of Romanian nurses. I remember that.
Yeah. All right. Okay. NWO would. I don't know what you mean by that one, Betty.
NW. What was that comment?
NWO, where we don't belong.
Oh, I'm not so sure of that acronym.
Yeah. Okay, so next one we got here, which we alluded to earlier on, is about the new plan to double Niagara Regional Housing stock. Niagara Regional Housing has been working on a strategy to increase the availability of affordable housing, and expand the housing stock to meet the growing demand. The affordable housing outlines efforts to add more units, provide a mix of housing opportunities for different income, but they're also saying that we need over 100,000 new housing units in the affordable market block.
This is really can be tied back to Bob Gale's 3.5 and showing the challenges we do then have. We need because our housing has exploded too much and is putting a huge strain on people, and the taxes themselves are putting a strain on people. But on the other hand, we need tax levies to now build affordable homes for those people who can't afford it. It seems to be a real spiral. Housing prices are going up, taxes are going up. We need a large amount of those taxes to kind of reinvest in our affordable housing, and yet the taxes themselves are putting pressure on the taxpayer, which inhibits them to be able to buy a house. But we need that tax money to help to start new houses. So basically, they've come up with three strategies here. The plan to double the housing stock with the assistance of federal government and federal and provincial government. Now, while councillors still need to confirm the commitment to the Consolidated Housing Master Plan at the next full council meeting, May 22nd, they endorsed the plan and funding strategy at the Committee of the Whole meeting last week. Now, this basically is they're giving them three. There was three possible ways in which this has happened, and of course, this is trying to take advantage of more as much of the federal and provincial funding that will come for new affordable housing. Like most of the money that's coming from the feds and the province are geared towards affordable housing.
Yeah.
And so you want to take advantage of that as you can. But if you don't have a program that will, elicit that funding from the government has certain conditions that you have to meet before you get those funding. So the first plan they came up with was a passive plan, a passive one without any property taxpayer funding that relies on federal and provincial government grants at all. That would feel very comfortable to the actual local taxpayer. So the local taxpayer wouldn't have to throw anything into it. That, however, means that you will get less from the feds.
Yeah.
Now, the other one on the other side of this is an aggressive plan with a front-loaded taxpayer funding over the first 5 years that allows the faster initial Niagara Regional Housing Capital Reserve growth to meet the current crisis before leveling off to provide $546 million by 2050.
Yeah.
And the middle way, which you might expect a cautious council to take, is the middle way with smaller but consistent annual levy increases.
That kind of appeals to me. I was just going to be starting to say the kind of where we need to be is where we are making, it's no use going through a period whereby we spend out over a 3-year period and we make 5,000 new homes. Then for a 10-year period, we do nothing. And then we spend out for another period and we make 5,000 new homes. It would be better to add a couple of hundred homes a year, but be consistently adding a couple of hundred homes a year than to be, have.
What's wrong with the aggressive way? Where you could do the same thing, but faster.
Well, yeah, I think the aggressive way basically means that you've got to have the funding available to make that happen.
Well, what it means is that you're going to front load with taxpayer funding. The regional residents will have to put up more money for that.
Yeah,
and
well, that's a problem.
And you can swing it back to what Bob Gale is saying. How can you do something like that if you're going to restrict your increase?
And that's exactly my question. That's why I'd prefer some form of balanced. We continue to do this, come what may.
Well, I think it was like you need not have put the other two options on the table, obviously, because doing nothing basically and just waiting for Fed and provincial money would be a slow process, and we really wouldn't meet our demands. The aggressive way would meet our demands, but the local taxpayer would have to put up more money for it.
Yeah.
And the middle way is the local taxpayer pays a consistent but smaller amount to facilitate this along with the federal and provincial funding. So you can pretty much figure that was the only choice that would be available to the region. That's the only, because of course the region would like a situation where only Fed and provincial money came in to do this, but it would not match the needs of the area. Yeah. So front loading it aggressively would solve the problem faster, but add tax burden, a consistent and heavier tax burden on the residents, which is contrary to what's going on, because if you do that, that puts more stress on the taxpayer, who pushes more of them into the place where they need affordable housing.
Yeah.
As
basically the plan is by 2051 to add 100,000 affordable units to the.
Yeah, it seems to be reasonable, but we still are in a situation where, and I'll swing it back to the previous article, where the tax burden on the average business and resident is detrimental to the local economy. So you want the local economy to grow. You want people's wages to be able to match their housing needs, but at the same time, you still have to fight affordable housing. You have to come up with something. The raises in the huge jump in real estate prices was partly due to the irresponsible federal government. Basically, in 2015, they were going to build a lot more houses for the new immigrants that were coming in, but never did it. And then try to quickly start doing it around 2022, running around the country, giving out money for fast and quick ups, like as if you could just build something overnight.
You weren't going to put thousands of starts in overnight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you had Justin going around putting on a hard hat, going to construction sites, telling everybody, build. If you build it, I'll give you money. I need to get elected too, so I got to look good. But the fact of the matter, it was very poorly planned. So Yeah, which
And we
makes
said
me
that we
very
said that at
nervous. It
the
makes
time.
me very, just as an aside, it makes me very nervous because the same the same people in the Liberal government who made these uninsightful plans are the ones that are still in the cabinet. We'll see if Mark Carney can make them think a little clearer.
Yeah, we said at the time, I remember us talking about this way back, the Fed plan way back in 22. And we said at the time it wasn't going to work.
No, seriously. And then and they were impatient that not enough housing was going up. And then the province was putting up incentives. And then the feds come into town and upset the incentives that the province was doing.
Yeah.
No coordination.
And at least the thing about the provincial projects is that the provinces and the municipalities were working in sync. No,
Yes, and there was
it wasn't
incentives.
perfect. It wasn't perfect, but they were working together, and the feds come in and blow the whole thing.
Yeah, and there was incentives. There was incentives for the province. You can get this money, but you if you do enough work to get these projects started and all that, and we'll give you extra money. But if you don't, you don't get shovels in the ground. You don't get the money.
Yeah.
There's and I don't know. But we have to play catch up, and that's what bothers me so much. The government is supposed to plan for the future, and they never seem to be. They always seem to be fixing what they didn't plan for. Lack of oversight. And these plans are welcome if they are established. So there's middle way plan to build housing where the regional money is included with the federal and provincial money. And if they initiate this well and with consistency, it will work. But that's my worry. Will they do that?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And there's been that's let's leave it at that. Let's leave it there. I think. Right. Okay. So a Fort Erie man was who sent intimate photographs of himself to an undercover cop posing as a team has been arrested.
Yeah. So this guy, the reason why I put this out there, well, for one thing, to warn anybody out there that might have young people, teenagers, particularly young girls. This guy was targeting girls that he around 14 years old. The cops caught him by pretending to be a girl of about 14 years old, and he was trying to solicit her over the computer. He sent rude photos of his private parts out there. The guy is 52 years old. Now here's the rub. He's a 52-year-old resident of Fort Erie, and but he has been a contributor to society. He is in every other way just an ordinary everyday Joe. And my problem here is what makes a man like this. Is this a kind of disease? What is it with trying to have sex with underage children? We found this with some of the child molesters and stuff like that. They those who prefer boys and that will go for the boys pre-puberty. As soon as the boys hit puberty, they reject them. So what makes this in the mind? Like this is a kind of a disease. This is uncomfortable. Where is a person in this particular case? It looks like he was an ordinary everyday contributor to society in every other way. So he wasn't a criminal in any other way, but has these unnatural desires. How do we protect our children from people who cannot help it? That is we all know our own power of sexual attraction to the other To women, we know what we went through when we
Well,
were young.
irrespective of which way your sexual attraction goes, yeah,
Yeah.
we're aware of it. But yeah, why for young people?
Yeah. How can we fix that?
Mm.
What is the source of that? That is an unnatural thing, and to go for someone of like I can't even possibly imagine what
No,
that would
neither
be
do I.
like, because being an ordinary heterosexual guy, when I see a fully grown woman, that's when I feel attracted to the fully grown woman. You know, I'm
Yeah,
a fully grown man. I'm a
and
fully grown woman. So
yeah, and if you were gay, you'd be looking for the fully grown man, right?
I suppose so.
Yeah,
But
I'm
because
just I'm just saying that you put that into perspective, and most people want people of of a similar. You know, if you were dating, you'd probably be looking for somebody who's similar age to you. You're putting a dating profile up on whatever system you're doing. You'd be saying, I'd be looking for somebody who's like, let's say 50 to 75, right? If you were looking.
yes, uh, uh, so he's like 52 and he's looking for a 14-year-old,
Yeah, yeah.
asking about her cup size and all that other stuff. He has a couple operating names, but in any other way, he's a supposedly,
Normal member of society. Yeah,
yeah. Now he has to be, he has to go on a sexual predator list, that for 20 years, for at least 20 years, which I think is good. But I'm trying to think what's going on in his mind. He probably wishes that he wasn't like that at all, but has these drives. How do we interrupt that kind of unnatural
well,
drive?
it's actually the same sort of thing. Yeah, there has been some on the scientific side. There's been some issues about they've talked about there's drugs you can use to actually stop sex drive, right? Which can be mandated for serial rapists. Don't know how they work. Don't know how they work. Don't know the success rate or anything like that. I just know that they have been mandated for serial rapists.
I don't know. Court was told the defendant sent two photographs. Well, anyway, he's just a sexual deviant,
Mm.
and I'm sure he doesn't want to be. He doesn't want to be.
I don't know.
When they've, uh, of course, he's looking around and knowing that he's not normal. He's not the
Yeah.
normal guy. When they talked, I remember they interviewed a guy in prison who was, his thing was boys, young boys, other children too, but young boys. And he knew, because he was told that that was unnatural and he had to be put away. He realized that, but but couldn't understand why he had those drives. Like that was his sexual drive for young boys and young girls, and he knew that it was bad. He knew it was evil, but he didn't feel that it was, and that he had to use his own logic to understand that this was uh, deviant. And of course, sure, he doesn't want to be deviant, but he was, and he's answering the drives of that deviated, that sort of unnatural sex drive. I just, I would just like all that to stop. I would like to find ways in which to interrupt that before it develops into a person.
Yeah.
You know, so normally when we get to our teens, we start to feel attractive, a strong attraction to the opposite sex, and some at that time too. Maybe about 4% of the population start feeling a strong drive towards the same sex. But almost all of us go
Yeah.
through that where we have a powerful drive.
Irrespective of which whether you're attracted to same sex or opposite sex, typically most people will put, if they're looking for dating, they'll put a dating profile which would be somewhere around their own age, right?
Well, yeah, mature. Anyway, you want a fully mature woman, Um,
Yeah, okay, you
I
might.
mean, somebody that's 20 would think of a girl between 18 and 22, basically.
Yeah.
Women will go for older men more often than the other way around, but they're fully grown up, mature adults. That's the thing,
Yeah.
and not children, and that just kind of
Yeah.
very
Adult. Yeah.
gets under my skin. I
Yeah, I
cringe.
know. Yeah, I know. I get you. All right. Yeah, and so that actually got a couple of comments here. Here in St. Kitts, a man caught in the library touching girl. Okay, don't know anything about. I haven't seen that case reported, but yeah, okay. And you're right. Watch the kids, right? I think my ancestor was hung in Canada for killing Wendigos, some sort of vampire.
For
Okay.
killing a vampire?
Mm.
Well, that needs to be explained. It sounds really interesting, though. Super
Mm.
interesting.
Yeah, yeah, and that whole culture is quite is different.
Yeah. I don't know. We have children that and parents and guardians and all that. I know nowadays that you can't look over the shoulder of your child consistently, but of course children want to be more older than they are. They want to be treated like adults and
Yeah,
something.
come on, that's you know when you get to about 14, 15, you're kind of, I'm not a kid anymore, I'm an adult. You did that, I did that,
Well,
right?
that's yeah, but that's my warning. Of course, you're going to do that, and parents can't always have their look over the shoulders of their uh, pre-adolescent and early adolescent kids. So I think some sort of training has to happen either in schools, uh, along with the parents, to kind of warn the kids what is out
Yeah.
there.
Oh yeah.
You know,
There's nasty people out there, that's for sure.
yeah, and believe me, they're not the ordinary kind of criminal that looks for personal gain. They have deviant sexual drives for some reason, and this forces them into
Yeah.
satisfying those drives, and it even gives me cringe talking about it. But how do you fix somebody like that?
Mm.
That's my question.
Yeah. How do you fix them, and really knowing that they probably don't want to be fixed anyway?
It's not that they have these particular drives, and I'm sure if they thought of it, they would much rather be ordinary people with ordinary sexual drive. Seriously, I think they would, but they can't help themselves. They have these deviant needs, and I'm pretty certain if given the choice, do you want to be an ordinary adult with ordinary sexual uh, desires, or given that choice, I'm sure they would have take normal, but they can't help it. The drive is there.
Well, that's
So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Don't know anything about that's a whole psychological thing there you're touching into, and don't know that either of us are qualified in that regards to actually dig into it. Dave?
and then, yeah,
What?
yeah. Yeah,
You keep blipping.
yes, I would say, regardless of anything, they are like they're have to be more careful, and I'm glad they're catching them. I'm glad they're catching the.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Okay. And I think we can kind of call it quits at that point.
Yes, and as I mentioned every day, don't forget Gaza. That genocide is continuing. Don't let it get out of your mind. There's going to be. We have to put our politicians on the carpet for this. Yes, we do have all kinds of our own problems, but that is incredible. And we even got criticism. Canadian government put aside $100 million for Gaza, and they even got criticism for that. So um, do not forget Gaza. Pray for peace. And without further ado, I bid you adieu. Have a great day.